Almost a month ago, NASA launched the Artemis 1 mission as a major step to send humans back to the moon. Well, today that mission is returning to Earth after checking out how the Orion spacecraft performs thousands of miles beyond. So joining us now to talk about that mission and what happens next is Paul Slaybach, Director of the Aerospace Engineering Program at the University of Hartford.
Yeah,
Paul, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me this morning.
Yeah, this is super cool anytime we cover this. For people who have not been following this mission, tell us what Artemis 1 was all about.
Right, so Artemis 1 was an uncrewed mission, so there's no people aboard as a test of the entire Artemis system, right? This is a new system. We haven't flown a system like this since Apollo, really, that's capable of reaching the moon. So it's a brand new rocket, a new crew capsule that we're testing, and we needed to make sure that the entire system works before we put people aboard to send them to the moon on Artemis 2.
Yeah, and you mentioned Artemis 2. This is really laying the groundwork for Artemis 2, 3, and 4 that we read about online. Tell us about what's next and when we can expect those missions to take off.
Right, so Artemis 2, I believe, is scheduled for 2024. That's going to put people around the moon. We won't land yet on Artemis 2. This is another test flight to make sure people are capable of going to the moon, coming back. The next mission, I believe, is going to actually land people on the moon, which is very exciting because it's been 50 years since we've had anybody land on the moon, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, and part of that mission I also read about is landing the first person of color on the moon as well as the first woman, hopefully.
That's right.
That is super neat. And ultimately, NASA really wants to explore Mars as well, right? Tell us about that part.
Right, so this entire Artemis system is meant for deep human exploration, deep space human exploration, including the moon and eventually Mars. So once we set up shop on the moon, as it were, we can get to Mars a little bit easier, and this SLS system is capable of evolving to get us all the way to Mars eventually. So it's a little ways down the road. Let's walk before we can run, as we say.
Exactly. Let's focus on today. So today we have this spacecraft that's coming down, splashing down in the Pacific Ocean. What happens next to determine if this was successful and if we can move on?
So they're going to go back through all the data. They're going to look at what happened from launch. They're going to look at all the environmental controls inside Orion, make sure it was habitable for humans, that entire flight, and then move forward with Artemis 2, essentially. So yeah, they'll know whether or not it was successful. All indications to this point are that it was a very successful mission. It launched fine. It was able to orbit the moon just fine, came back, and assuming splashdown goes okay, it was a very successful mission.
Yeah, we're keeping our fingers crossed. And what's really cool also about this mission is that Connecticut has a reason to celebrate as well, because several companies here in Connecticut help supply NASA with materials. Tell us about that.
That's right. So there's 44 companies, I believe, in Connecticut that all have parts on this system somewhere. So those companies all contributed to this mission over the last many years that it's been in development. And those companies, right, they're supplied by the engineers and the workforce here in Connecticut. Here at the University of Hartford, we've got the only aerospace engineering program in the state. We've got our mechanical engineering program that helps to help populate some of these companies. And they hire graduates from all the schools around Connecticut, many of them right here in Aerospace Alley in the central Connecticut. So.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's something I did not realize. So it's so cool to see that a piece of Connecticut is on board.
It is. It's amazing.
This historic mission. Yeah, Paul Slaybach, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Such cool information. The time now 8:41. Let's get you a check on the forecast with Sam Pieri as we are tracking